Just hoping that we can win this battle once and for all and not have to be called handicapped, and hoping that people will look at us as human beings and not as handicapped, because we do have feelings.
I know that I have the right to get married, to live on my own, and to attend the church of my choice.
I think it's cruel. I think it's terribly cruel that we are spoken this way, labeled this way. To me, if you got to label something, label words, label jars, label street, but don't label person. You put them down in the hole. And I'd like to see personally for a go for people first, to get rid of mentally retarded, mentally disabled, mentally everything.
An exciting social movement is growing throughout the world. Virtually thousands of people with developmental disabilities are shedding their passive role to stand up and speak for themselves. This grassroots movement is known as the self-advocacy movement of persons with developmental disabilities. It began over 10 years ago in the United States, and today there are self-advocacy groups developing in Canada, England, and Australia. These people have organized to demand that they be recognized as people first and handicapped second. They are demonstrating their ability to make their own decisions and solve their own problems. Their message is that they want to be recognized as full-fledged citizens. We now invite you to witness the excitement of this movement and the promise it holds for people with disabilities everywhere.
How rights are sometimes limited. Objectives for this is to discuss some of the ways our civil and human rights are sometimes limited.
The process of self-advocacy is a two-way street. When it comes to understanding people with developmental disabilities, we must recognize that we are blinded by the stereotypes we hold in our minds. The challenge then is upon us to re-educate ourselves, to literally turn upside down our assumptions about who these people are. And as they learn to emphasize their abilities and speak for themselves, we must listen carefully to what they are saying to us.
That really hurts me deep down. So you're really kind of caught. The things that people want you don't have, and yet you don't have the chance to get those things because you keep getting turned down.
They won't give it to you.
Okay.
We are adults, the way they treat us adults, not as school kids.
What about the issue of labeling people mentally retarded? What do you think People First is doing about that problem?
I know we are letting the public know that we don't like to be called mentally retarded, dumb, and ignorant, and can't learn. We can learn if they give us a chance to learn. Because we're so slow in learning, that doesn't mean we can't learn at all.
And all my life I've heard, Judy, you can't do it, it's too hard. Judy, you can't do it, it's too hard for you. So I try to do it. And I begin to focus this in my mind, everything that I tried to do was too hard. I didn't ever do anything. But since I moved up to Good River and started in the workshop up there, everything's working out really good because I've made it my mind that I can learn anything that I want to learn. And I can do anything that I want to do. That's about it.
How many? I'm going to see a raise of hands about how many people have thought about voting. Well, some people say that you shouldn't vote. This lady up in front here just said you shouldn't vote because you can't think or can't write. Is that true? Let me hear that again. Is that a yes or a no? Okay, I think I agree with you. I think you can think, and you can write, and you can vote.
And so what that does is it allows us to take control and to become powerful with our anger,
Organizing is the process of people working together to get things done, okay, to get power. Okay, so again, here's the name of our workshop, okay? How we can get power and organize for positive change.
Starting a self-advocacy group is a challenging yet rewarding experience that will question traditional stereotypes of people with developmental disabilities. At the 1984 International Self-Advocacy Conference in Tacoma, Washington, veteran self-advocate Jenny Selman led a workshop on how to start a self-advocacy group. She began by listing several important considerations.
1. Get another self-advocacy group to help you get started. 2. Talk with your friends and about what self-advocacy is and the need for people to speak up and speak out and become citizens in their community.
Recruiting new members for a self-advocacy group can be accomplished by going to places where people with developmental disabilities live and work, such as group homes or sheltered workshops. Arrange a group meeting at a time convenient to potential members and introduce self-advocacy and what people do in self-advocacy groups. Whenever possible, do the presentation jointly with a consumer. As the group begins to grow, consumers will be prepared to do membership recruiting by themselves with only minimal support from an advisor.
3. Find an accessible place to meet that is close to the bus lines. Try and find a place to meet where your other groups meet.
If your community has a good public transportation system, getting members to meetings need not be a problem. Another alternative is to use volunteers. When people find out the purpose of self-advocacy groups, they are often willing to help with the logistics. A group in Massachusetts was successful in dealing with their transportation needs by recruiting volunteers through an advertisement in their local paper.
And for some of us, the transportation issue meant, how do I get from my front door to the local group meeting? And how can I get volunteers to get me there? And so we developed a whole system around asking for volunteer drivers in the newspaper and then screening people. And that was their job. And that's one of the things that we were really clear about, that we wanted specific people with roles. So there was a driver, there was a personal care attendant, because we didn't want to be put in a position where you had to ask somebody to be nice to you. You know, that if their job was to be a driver, then and they had volunteered for that, then that was their job, and it wasn't that they were, just doing it to be nice.
4, make sure that the day and time you meet is good for everyone. Make sure the day and time you meet is not the same day and time when people are already involved with other things. 5, make sure that the members are in control of the place, day and time that you meet.
Although the advisor provides a lot of direction as the group gets started, she or he must never forget that the group belongs to the members and that they have ultimate control. Often a group may make a mistake which perhaps could be avoided if the advisor took control, but the group can only learn and develop from the consequences of their own decisions.
And I said, hey, when are we going to learn how to take responsibilities and take risks? If you don't learn how to take responsibilities and risks, are we ever going to learn? Because if you take the risk for us, we're not learning anything. If you take the responsibility for us, we're not going to learn. So we have to learn somewhere.
A primary consideration in starting a self-advocacy group is whether to begin as an autonomous, self-sustaining group or join forces with an existing organization. Some groups have started under the umbrella of a parent or professional advocacy organization, such as the Association for Retarded Citizens or the Protection and Advocacy Agency. Others have started within a service program, like a group home or sheltered workshop. Yet another approach is to join with an existing coalition of physically disabled self-advocates, such as a Center for Independent Living. The advantage of joining an existing group is the opportunity to share such resources as office space, supplies, and political contacts. However, in order to avoid problems of conflict of interest and tokenism, and in order to gain credibility as experts on their own disability, group members need to strive toward establishing an autonomous existence. Once the basic logistics are completed and the first meeting is scheduled, it is time to begin doing self-advocacy. Forming a group is a process, and the key to making it successful is to start slowly and build a strong foundation. Most people with developmental disabilities have never had the experience of being part of a self-advocacy group, where they are in control and have the responsibility to make decisions and solve their own problems. Frequently, early meetings will move at a very slow pace. A good stimulus for the start of a meeting is to have individual members introduce themselves. For many people, this will be a new and scary task, so encourage each individual with a round of applause and an affirmative statement like, "Nice to see you here." This will ensure that everyone gets a chance to speak in the meeting, and it is the first step toward sharing power so that everyone feels like an important and equal member.
We believe that it's the individual People First member who's the most important person. People First is not doing its job unless we are working with that individual member so that he or she can stand up and speak out. We can't lose sight of that individual member. They're the heart, the blood, the guts of people first.
Another process vital to the development of a self-advocacy group is setting and reaching goals. This provides an invaluable sense of personal power to the members, so it is important to help them set realistic goals. For a new group, this may be something as basic as learning to speak in turn. By helping pick meeting topics that have relevance to the lives of the members, people will be motivated to attend meetings and take part.
How many of you remember the last time you were angry?
Raise your hand.
This morning. How many of you were angry about something that happened to you because you were disabled?
It is extremely important for advisors to back off at the first indication that assistance isn't absolutely necessary. By constantly relocating the focus of power within the group itself will establish a solid foundation. As this occurs, speak with members about electing officers. The natural leaders will become evident early on and will probably be elected. However, in some cases, first officers are appointed by the group until everyone has the chance to learn the voting process. By serving as an officer, members learn to serve as peer leaders for their group and as role models to other members. As the group gets stronger, activity committees become a good way for everyone to begin learning about taking responsibility and feeling like they are an important part of the group. These activities can revolve around raising money or just having fun, either of which is guaranteed to build team spirit. With time, the advisor will find that the group needs less and less assistance and can remain in the background during much of the activities, coming forward to serve primarily as a resource person. This is a good indication of a job well done.
When I first started, I wasn't very open. I was afraid to talk. I was afraid to tell people things because I thought I would get in trouble. But it's not that way now, and that's what had helped me. It helped me to come out of that depression. If I have a problem, the group tries to sit down and explains to me how they can help me and what I have to do to help myself.
One of the first questions we want to ask is, what do you want from an advisor?
How do we control our advisors to do what we want and have it our way?
One of the questions that came up this morning, and it was Larry's question, was how do we get what we want from an advisor?
And that's really a job for you three at the moment, or four, because maybe you should think about what you want from people like Frank and I.
That's a tag we're always wearing, that we're controlling what's happening, we're manipulating. But
being an advisor is an ambitious task that involves taking many different roles. Depending upon the needs of the self-advocacy group, the advisor may serve as a facilitator, a problem solver, or an enthusiasm builder. But at the same time, the advisor must be careful not to offer too much direction, for the group, by design, is intended to be run by the members. The advisor needs to adopt the philosophy that to the extent people with developmental disabilities are viewed as passive and incapable, that is what they will be. And to the extent that they are recognized as contributing human beings, that is what they will become.
List of what an advisor should do. Number one is help us when we need it, help a little but not too much. 2 is let self-advocates run the group. And 3, tries to understand how self-advocates work.
I find that in that process, in some ways, I play the role of a clarifier and of a facilitator, encourager. At times, you jump in as a problem solver.
And I feel like my role has been to try to helping develop new leadership, that their role is not just to run the meetings and to take all the responsibility on themselves, but to help build leadership within the group and include everybody to whatever level they're able to. And I mean, that process has been really slow, but it's starting to happen.
But it seems to me part of what we're trying to facilitate is the creation of peer models, so that people will no longer model on us collectively, but will be content to model on their peers.
Sometimes helpers can be too much helpful.
I'm wondering, that's one of my fears, the role of an advisor. I mean, either pushing the group too much before they're ready, if they're, or backing off from getting involved in anything because that person's afraid too, or that person isn't confrontative, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we bring ourselves into it.
That's right.
How can we overcome that? That the helpers just stand back in the background and not even like helpers should be standing back in the background and let a self-advocate do the work.
And it's difficult because you want, as an individual, and as a concerned individual, commissioned individual, you want to say something, and you very possibly do for a while. But it's you have to learn to lay back. And I think possibly being so enthusiastic in this new field of work has meant that sometimes I've, been over-intrusive.
Walking the fine line of offering assistance, while at the same time clearly remaining aware of when to stay in the background, is the challenge the advisor continually faces. It is very easy for self-advocates to allow themselves to be dominated. So the advisor must always encourage members to take as much control as they possibly can, even when it means differing from the advisor.
I often forget, and then I'm reminded again of how responsive people are to what I think or what I feel or whatever, and everyone in a group almost, even if I try to say that it's not necessary. I mean, if they think that something's going to upset me or that I'm not going to approve of it, it's
they won't say it or they won't do it.
Yeah, and
the power that you sometimes feel, I feel that sometimes I have.
Yeah.
Which I didn't ask for particularly.
Right. I have, and it's very hard to try to teach people. I mean, if you're trying to teach them not to respond to you, and basically that is what you're trying to do. And yet, of course,
You still want to be a part of the group?
Yeah, and the fact is that your respect for them is often a very powerful thing that enables the growth. And so you want them, I mean, you don't want to say don't respond to me at all. It's just that it's really hard to get that equality or to know when it's there. It's very easy to go either toward sort of taking over. That's very easy to do. Or on the other hand, to just stepping back and saying, well, I'm not important in this group. You know, as a supporter.
It's a very fine line, I think, and I think it's not only hard for us in trying to figure out as the group moves along what our role is, and it changes so much. But I think it's also hard for the group, because on one hand we're being supportive of them and helping them along and teaching them the skills they need, and then all of a sudden we're saying, well, it's all up to you. I mean, at some point that whole issue comes up.
We would like help from support people. But we would like to be able to speak for ourselves first.
My name is Tibor Mahaley, and I work for the Mental Retardation Division of the Health Commission in Victoria. So I'm your classic conflict of interest case.
If advisors work within the service delivery system or are connected with a parent or professional advocacy organization, they are apt at one time or another to experience a conflict of interest. Generally, this dilemma occurs when a self-advocacy group takes a position which is in direct conflict with an agency policy.
I'd really like us to talk about the conflict of interest issue because, and I'll just tell you what my opinions are, I guess what I feel is that no matter who you are, well, I think it's important to avoid conflict of interest when, to the extent possible, but that actually, no matter who you are, you always have some potential conflicts of interest. Even if you don't work for an agency, you may have other things that are very important to you that could become a conflict with what the group wants. And so, if your real loyalty lies with the group and the people's growth and the people's development and the people's own thoughts and wishes, then that clarifies that for me. I don't have to think about, well, the ARC isn't going to like this, or where I work isn't going to like this, because I know that actually I know what I would choose. So it's not as much of a conflict as long as I know that. I've had to go through a long period where I had to know that I would choose, one over the other. But I don't feel now that if I worked directly in a service providing agency that I would have as much of a problem, because if it became a conflict, I would choose the work of self-advocacy over the other things. And I think a lot, maybe many of us come to that in the long run.
And I think, like Bonnie was saying before, in a way you have to examine your own attitude to the people you're working with, no matter who you work for.
Becoming an advisor means putting oneself on the cutting edge of a movement that sees people with developmental disabilities as the best experts on their own limitations. This involves providing continual support so that members may claim a sense of personal power and recognize their worth as community citizens. It means doing a lot of hard work, yet staying in the background. But the reward comes when the group begins to identify their common concerns and problems, make their own decisions, and speak for themselves.
You know what I have in my mind? I have this picture of the ideal advisor, what an advisor really is supposed to be, and then, I measure. And of course I always come up short. and then when I meet people and get to talk like this, I realize that there isn't any ideal advisor. And
I think that there needs to be a trust between the advisor and the people, and that the group also pick the advisor, because it just makes it that much easier, and the trust is already there, because if you don't have the trust, then you're not going to be able to communicate with each other.
Okay, well, why don't we get started with our meeting? I'm really glad that everybody could make it. This is our first officer training meeting. I'm wondering if anyone has any questions about their new role before we get started.
I do. I'm never been a secretary before, and I would like to know how to go about it. Maybe by pictures or signs or something like that.
Well, gee, Sue, that's no problem. I have several really good suggestions that people have made and have used in the past. Why don't you and I get together after our meeting tonight, and I'll show you some of those.
Okay, great.
Officer training is vital to the success of a self-advocacy group. It is a time when the advisor assists the members in developing the necessary knowledge and skills to run their meetings. Most people with developmental disabilities have never had the opportunity to participate as an active member or serve as an officer in an organization. So officer training is the time when the advisor takes the role of teacher and helps prepare self-advocates to become leaders to their peers. A self-advocacy group functions pretty much the same as any formal organization, with a president, a vice president, a secretary, a treasurer, and a sergeant-at-arms, all of whom serve a set time of office. Providing each officer with a written handout about their role and then reading each description as a group will help them gain confidence.
The treasurer needs to know how to count, add, and subtract money. This report is called the treasurer's report. The treasurer puts the chapter's money in the bank and keeps track of the money earned and spent by the chapter. The treasurer goes to the officers' meeting and helps plan the agenda for the chapter meeting.
Thanks, Debbie. That was great. Bob, since you've been elected our new president, why don't you begin by reading what your new responsibilities are?
Okay. The president opens the meeting and asks the members to introduce themselves. The president asks the secretary to read the minutes of the last meeting. After the meetings are read, the president asks the treasurer to give the treasurer's report.
Great, thank you, Bob.
By taking these roles, self-advocates learn how to run their group, and they also develop an understanding for how most formal groups are organized. During the officer training meeting, the complete agenda is drawn up so that everyone can follow along. It is helpful to use picture symbols for non-readers in the group, and reviewing the rudiments of running a meeting will help officers feel prepared with their responsibilities at meeting time.
It looks like we're going to need to vote on whether or not to have another bake sale. Is everybody clear on the voting process? What's the first thing that we do when we have a vote?
Someone has to make a motion.
Right. Someone makes a motion, and then what happens next?
Someone needs to second it.
That's right, and then what?
And then we have a discussion, and then we take a vote.
That's right. Everybody understands the voting process perfectly. Are there any other questions?
I need help on my treasurer's report.
Okay, Debbie. Let's see what you've got here. Well, let's see. It looks like we earned $40 at the last bake sale that we had. And so you'll want to add that to the $200 that we already had in the account. And then that'll give us a balance of $240.
I understand that now.
Good.
Officer training represents a lot of hard work for both officers and advisors, but it can also be a lot of fun. People First of Washington developed a board game that teaches players how to run the meeting. The game is modeled after Monopoly. Players draw question cards that quiz their knowledge about running a meeting as they move their pawns around the board. Advisors are urged to be creative in coming up with different training tools for teaching officers these new skills. The ultimate goal of officer training is to make it unnecessary for advisors to conduct the meetings in any way. As self-advocates become experts at their officer roles, they will provide peer training to new officers who are elected to follow.
Which card goes first? Where does it go?
First, so where does he go? He goes first. He goes down.
All right, where does the second card?
Second motion.
Where does it go? Where does it go? Where do you want to put her?
Right there, right in front of you.
Where do you want to put her? All right, what's the second card then? Okay, the third? Okay, the fourth? Put them where you want to put them.
All in favor is next.
All in favor. Green one.
Why don't you put him in the right place?
Yeah, he's fine.
You're right.
Okay, what next?
And you go over here. You go.
No, she doesn't.
You go over here.
Great.
We are so happy to have you with us today. People from all over the world will be working and talking together at this conference. Are you ready to speak up? Yes! Are we ready to speak out? Yes!
In July 1984, self-advocates from the United States, Canada, England, and Australia gathered together to hold an international self-advocacy conference. Planning and running a convention on either an international or statewide level is a dramatic activity that is helping many self-advocates learn self-empowerment and self-assertiveness skills.
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Pentland from Million Falls, and hello to you from Australia.
A recent national survey revealed that 11 states hold periodic conventions, and current information collected at the University of Oregon indicates that Canada and Australia are beginning to hold conferences as well. The self-advocacy movement in the United States was founded in Oregon in 1974, when a group of people with developmental disabilities decided to have their own convention. In the process of carrying out this event, People First was born. During the months of organizing, members of the group had the opportunity to make key decisions, solve problems, and take a great deal of responsibility. They demonstrated to all involved that they were a competent and productive group. Any town or city that hosts a self-advocacy convention is likely to learn that their attitudes toward people with disabilities are simply uninformed. Indeed, their perceptions of people with developmental disabilities will change tremendously.
I'm really so happy to share this evening with you. And on behalf of everyone in Lane County, I want to welcome you. I am so happy for you and for our children and for all of us that you've decided to get right out in the mainstream, right here in the Hilton Hotel in downtown Eugene. I really thank you for that. I think you're laying a very strong foundation for your future, for our future, and I can assure you that in Lane County, people are first.
Planning a convention needs to begin about a year in advance to assure that consumers have the time they need to complete all the necessary details. It's a good idea to host it over a weekend, when most self-advocates and advisors are free from work responsibilities. During the convention, a variety of activities occur, including educational workshops and socializing with friends. States that have a network of local self-advocacy groups schedule time when elections of state officers can be held. Local dignitaries are invited to address the group. And of course, there is always entertainment. The organization a convention requires might seem overwhelming, but actually a group does not need a great deal of experience to get started. A few dedicated self-advocates and 1 or 2 committed advisors are the essential ingredients. Once a date for the convention has been established, a hotel must be selected that is centrally located and the right size to accommodate the expected number of participants. This can vary from 100 to 1,000 or more. And since a significant number of people will be in wheelchairs, room size, accessibility, and availability to transportation become critical issues. The considerations involved in choosing a convention site are so numerous that it's helpful to develop a checklist. Members use this checklist when they tour possible convention locations. Then they can compare their findings to make their final choice. A valuable resource for this process is a local convention bureau. They can help the group to identify different possibilities and, in the process, learn about self-advocacy. Other decisions involve choosing a theme, developing a banquet menu, selecting entertainment, and arranging for advertising. Financing the convention is also an important consideration. Most hotels and convention centers are willing to offer breaks to groups during their off-seasons. Individual participants are generally required to pay their own way through a pre-registration payment to the planning group. States and provinces that hold periodic conventions report that self-advocates begin budgeting their money for their trip up to a year in advance. As the convention date approaches, it is important to organize an in-service training for the hotel staff to familiarize them with the self-advocacy movement. This helps to dispel certain myths about people with developmental disabilities. And it is also a time when members can talk with the staff about how they might best respond to the needs of their guests.
We try to keep everybody satisfied.
Sure.
We try to keep it in a normal way without having make a big issue. We try to keep it smooth and nice.
That's nice.
And everybody usually try to take care of their own luggage and all that. And
Carrie, about how much of your group attending will be in wheelchairs?
well, we have about I would say from 40 to 50. This depends on it could be because it be spread from from Portland to Salem.
I'm just saying, if we know that we have a number of wheelchair guests, that'll help the front desk to make sure what rooms and every way everybody can be accommodated in the room. So we're just looking to see how many people. Also at the dinner tables, and Charles, I'm sure, knows the answer to the question I'm thinking.
We usually leave about 5 or 6 tables with 2 chairs.
Right. Where they have the access with the wider rows. So we just need to know wheelchairs, to have an idea.
Educational workshops are a primary focus of the convention and are usually run by the members themselves. Several months in advance, the planning committee asks individuals and groups of self-advocates to be responsible for conducting workshops. Topics include problems encountered in living independently, learning about rights and responsibilities, how it feels to be labeled retarded. In some states, self-advocacy organizations require that these workshops be run by consumers themselves, with the belief that in order to develop their full potential, they must begin by speaking for themselves at their own convention. In this way, the event is not only an empowering experience for those who organize it, but is empowering for those who attend as well. The sheer presence of their number in such active roles demonstrates to themselves and to us that they are truly people first.
Welcome, everyone. Glad you can make it. Are you enjoying yourself?